The sun hung low over the Arizona desert on November 3, 1982, casting long shadows across the cracked asphalt of Route 66. Dale Pritchard, a 38-year-old long-haul trucker from Tulsa, Oklahoma, guided his Peterbilt 359 westward, the engine's familiar rumble a steady companion on what should have been a routine run from Oklahoma City to Barstow, California. The CB radio crackled with the usual chatter, truckers swapping road conditions, warnings about speed traps, and the occasional joke to break the monotony of the endless highway. Dale had been driving these roads for nearly 15 years, knew every truck stop and rest area between Tulsa and the Pacific. His wife, Margaret, expected him home by Sunday evening. Their daughter, Lisa, just turned 12, had a piano recital the following Tuesday that Dale had promised not to miss. The load was standard, machinery parts worth nearly $80,000, bound for a manufacturing plant in Barstow. Dale had picked up the freight in Oklahoma City early Thursday morning, stopped for lunch at a truck stop in Amarillo, and made good time across the Texas Panhandle into New Mexico. By the time he crossed into Arizona, the November sun was beginning its descent, painting the desert in shades of copper and gold. He'd planned to push through to Flagstaff, maybe grab a hot meal, and a few hours of sleep before the final leg to California. If you're enjoying this story, please subscribe to the channel and let us know in the comments where you're watching from. Now, let's continue with what happened that November evening. At 6:47 p.m., Dale's voice came through on Channel 19, the trucker's channel. "This is Roadrunner heading west on 66, just past Seligman. Weather's getting strange out here, folks. Sky looks like something I've never seen." Several drivers responded, asking what he meant. Dale's voice came back, tinged with confusion. "It's like purple and green, swirling, and my instruments are going haywire. Speedometers jumping all over, radios crackling even when nobody's transmitting." A driver named Carl Hendricks, hauling cattle from Amarillo about 20 miles behind Dale, keyed his microphone. "Roadrunner, this is Cattle King. You okay up there, buddy? Want me to catch up to you?" Dale's response was broken by static. "Yeah, I think I'm going to pull over and—" Then his transmission cut off mid-sentence. The last thing anyone heard was a burst of white noise that made several truckers pull their headsets away from their ears, then nothing but silence. Carl tried calling Dale back. "Roadrunner, you copy? Roadrunner, come back." No response. Other truckers on the channel joined in, calling for Dale, but Channel 19 remained silent where his voice had been. An eastbound driver named Joyce Millen reported that she'd passed a Peterbilt heading west around 6:45, and the truck had seemed fine, running lights all operational. But when she checked her mirrors a minute later, the lights were gone. She'd assumed the truck had pulled off onto one of the service roads that branched off Route 66, old access roads to abandoned gas stations and motor courts from the highway's glory days. When Dale didn't check in at the Barstow depot by Friday morning, the dispatcher tried raising him on the radio, then called the emergency contact number. Margaret Pritchard answered on the third ring, and the moment she heard the dispatcher's voice, something cold settled in her chest. Dale was never late. Never out of contact. In 15 years of long-haul trucking, he'd never once failed to check in when he was supposed to. She thanked the dispatcher, hung up, and immediately called the Arizona Highway Patrol. By Friday afternoon, patrol cars were scanning Route 66 between Seligman and Kingman, a desolate stretch of highway that wound through high desert and scattered remnants of the mother road's past. They found nothing. No truck, no skid marks. No signs of an accident, no evidence of a breakdown. It was as if Dale Pritchard and his 40-foot 18-wheeler had simply vanished into the desert air. The November wind blew across empty asphalt, carrying dust and tumbleweeds, but no answers. Part 2. Detective Raymond Torres of the Coconino County Sheriff's Department took over the case by Monday morning. A methodical man in his early 50s, with deep lines around his eyes, from years of squinting into the Arizona sun. Torres had worked missing person cases before, but nothing quite like this. Vehicles didn't just disappear, especially not semi-trucks weighing over 30,000 pounds loaded. He'd seen cars go off cliffs, trucks jackknife and burn, but this was different. There was no crime scene, no evidence, no starting point for an investigation. Torres began by interviewing every trucker who'd been on Route 66 that Thursday night. He set up a temporary command post at a truck stop outside Flagstaff, spending 12-hour days talking to drivers, taking statements, building a timeline. Most remembered hearing Dale's final transmission. The detail about the strange sky stuck with several of them. Carl Hendricks, the cattle hauler, sat across from Torres in a corner booth, nursing black coffee and remembering that evening with disturbing clarity. "I was about 20 miles behind him," Carl said, his weathered hands wrapped around the mug. "I remember looking up after he said that about the sky, and yeah, it did look weird, all purple and orange, like a bruise spreading across the horizon. But it was sunset, you know? Desert sunsets can look wild. I didn't think much of it at the time." He paused, staring into his coffee. But there was something else. Right after his transmission cut out, maybe 30 seconds later, I saw lights in the sky. Not stars, not aircraft lights. These were different, bright, moving fast, weaving like they were searching for something. Then they were gone, just vanished. I convinced myself I'd imagined it, told myself it was flares from the Air Force Base, or maybe heat lightning. Joyce Millen, the eastbound driver, had a similar story when Torres tracked her down at a truck stop outside Albuquerque. A tough woman in her 40s who'd been driving trucks since she was 19, Joyce didn't scare easily. But when she talked about that night, Torres saw something in her eyes he recognized, the look of someone who'd seen something that didn't fit into their understanding of the world. "I passed him around 6:30, maybe 6:45, she said. "Big Peterbilt, running lights all on, looked perfectly normal. I was listening to Channel 19, heard some chatter, but wasn't really paying attention. Maybe a minute after I passed him, I looked in my side mirror. You always check your mirrors, especially at night, and his lights were just gone, completely dark. I figured he'd pulled off, had some mechanical trouble maybe." She lit a cigarette, her hand shaking slightly. "But here's the thing I didn't tell anyone because it sounds crazy. Right after his lights disappeared, I looked up through my windshield and saw something in the sky. Circular lights, bright as stadium lights, moving against the wind. They were there for maybe 5-10 seconds, then they shot straight up and vanished. I've been driving these roads for 25 years, Detective. I know what aircraft look like, I know what satellites look like. This wasn't that." Torres spent weeks compiling statements, and a disturbing pattern emerged. At least 6 truckers on Route 66 that night had seen unusual lights in the sky around the time of Dale's disappearance. Most had dismissed it, filed it away as atmospheric phenomena, military exercises, anything that fit into a rational framework. But when Torres laid out all the testimonies together, the accounts aligned too well to be coincidence. Something had been in the sky over that stretch of highway on November 3rd, 1982, and shortly after, Dale Pritchard had vanished. Torres drove every mile of Route 66 between Seligman and Kingman, checking service roads, abandoned gas stations, collapsed motor courts. He hiked into arroyos and canyons, searched behind rock formations, followed tire tracks that led nowhere. He brought in search dogs, helicopter overflights, even consulted with geological survey teams about hidden canyons or sinkholes where a truck might have gone unseen. Nothing. The desert kept its secrets. Margaret Pritchard arrived in Arizona in mid-December with Lisa, staying at a budget motel in Flagstaff. Every morning, Margaret would drive portions of Route 66, stopping at truck stops to post flyers with Dale's photograph. The flyer showed him smiling, wearing his favorite John Deere cap, the photo taken at Lisa's 11th birthday party. Missing, Dale Pritchard, 38, long-haul trucker. Last seen November 3, 1982, Route 66 near Seligman, Arizona, driving a blue Peterbilt 359. If you have any information, please contact. Lisa sat silent in the passenger seat, watching the endless desert roll past, imagining her father out there somewhere, broken down, injured, waiting for help that never came. Christmas 1982 arrived cold and clear across northern Arizona. Margaret and Lisa spent it in the motel room, a small artificial tree blinking in the corner, presents unopened. Torres stopped by with updates, which meant no updates, and a bottle of sparkling cider. He sat with them for an hour, this gruff detective with a missing man he'd never met haunting his thoughts, and a family shattered by absence. By January, the case went cold. Margaret returned to Tulsa, but she called Torres every week for months. Then every month, then every few months. The answer was always the same: nothing new. Part 3. Margaret never remarried. In the years following Dale's disappearance, well-meaning friends and family suggested she move on, that she was still young, that Lisa needed a father figure. But Margaret couldn't imagine sharing her life with anyone else. She kept Dale's belongings exactly as he'd left them, his work boots by the back door, his coffee mug in the cupboard with the chip on the rim, his CB radio still set up in the garage, Channel 19 tuned in, the squelch set just how he liked it. Sometimes, late at night when sleep wouldn't come, she'd sit in the garage and listen to the truckers talking, their voices crackling across the miles, and she'd imagine Dale out there somewhere, keying his microphone, saying, "This is Roadrunner, heading home." Lisa grew up carrying the weight of unanswered questions. She threw herself into school, graduated high school with honors, earned a scholarship to the University of Denver where she studied law. She wanted to help people find answers, to give other families the closure hers had never received. She rarely talked about her father, but his absence shaped everything she did. The missed piano recital became symbolic. Her father had promised to be there, and forces beyond anyone's control had broken that promise. Life, she learned early, was unfair and inexplicable. Detective Raymond Torres retired in 1991 after 32 years with the Coconino County Sheriff's Department. His colleagues threw him a party, gave him a plaque and a gold watch, made speeches about his dedication and his solve rate. But Torres knew the cases that mattered weren't the ones he'd solved. They were the ones that got away. Dale Pritchard's case remained open, but dormant, a file in the cold case archives, a failure that gnawed at Torres during retirement. He'd bought a small house near Sedona, planned to spend his days hiking and enjoying the desert beauty he'd spent decades policing. But he couldn't let it go. He'd drive Route 66 sometimes, usually on Thursday evenings around sunset, retracing the route Dale would have taken that November night in 1982. He'd stop at the spot near Seligman, where the last transmission had come from, would stand on the shoulder of the highway and scan the desert, looking for something, anything, that might have been missed. The highway was quieter now. Interstate 40 had bypassed most of Route 66, leaving the old road to decay, a ghost highway haunted by memories of America's love affair with the open road. Torres kept his own file on the case, separate from the official record. He'd collected newspaper clippings about other disappearances along Route 66, stories of strange lights in the Arizona desert, declassified Air Force documents about radar anomalies. He'd become something of an amateur ufologist, though he hated the term and never used it. He wasn't looking for aliens or flying saucers. He was looking for Dale Pritchard, or at least an explanation that would give Margaret and Lisa some peace. Then, on October 12, 1997, nearly 15 years to the day after Dale's disappearance, Torres received a phone call that changed everything. The call came from the Mojave County Sheriff's Department. A group of dirt bikers exploring the backcountry near Peach Springs had made a discovery. Torres grabbed his keys and was on the road within 10 minutes, his heart pounding in a way it hadn't since his days on active duty. He arrived at the scene 3 hours later, following dirt roads deep into territory most people never saw. The landscape was brutal. Sandstone formations carved by wind and time, arroyos cutting through layers of geological history, creosote bushes and saguaro cacti standing sentinel over terrain that could kill the unprepared. 2 Mojave County deputies were already there, along with the 4 dirt bikers who'd made the discovery. One of them, a kid named Travis Dunn, maybe 22 or 23, looked pale despite his desert tan. "It's down there," Travis said, pointing into a wash about 30 feet below the desert floor. "We were riding through and I saw metal glinting in the sun. Thought maybe it was an old mining claim or something. But when we got closer..." He trailed off, shaking his head. Torres climbed down into the wash, his 60-year-old knees protesting. Half buried in sand, partially hidden by creosote bushes, and weathered by 15 years of desert winds and flash floods, was the rusted cab of a Peterbilt semi-truck. The blue paint had faded to grey, the chrome stripped away by sandblasting winds. But Torres recognized it immediately. He'd memorized every detail from the photographs Margaret had provided, the custom exhaust stacks, the Roadrunner decal Dale had put on the driver's door, the configuration of the running lights. Torres approached slowly, like he was approaching something sacred. The cab was damaged, the front end crumpled like it had gone over an embankment, though there was no embankment nearby high enough to cause such damage. The windshield was shattered, the interior filled with sand and debris. The trailer was detached, nowhere to be seen. But the strangest thing, the detail that would become the focus of news reports across the Southwest and beyond, was the sound coming from inside the cab. Static, the crackle and hiss of CB radio static. Torres pulled open the driver's side door, the hinges shrieking in protest. Sand cascaded out. The seat was rotted away, the dashboard cracked and sun-faded. But there, mounted on the console, was a Cobra 29 LTD CB radio, its green indicator light glowing faintly in the shadows. The unit was on, still transmitting or trying to receive, after 15 years of exposure to desert extremes. Torres stared at the radio, his mind refusing to accept what his eyes were showing him. The truck's battery was long dead. He could see it through the open hood, corroded to white powder. The alternator was seized. There were no solar panels, no hidden power source, nothing that could explain how the radio was functioning. Yet there it was, the indicator light pulsing gently, static crackling from the speaker, a technological impossibility that refused to obey the rules of physics. He reached for the handset, picked it up with trembling fingers, and pressed the talk button. The static changed pitch, responding to the circuit completion. Torres keyed the microphone. "This is Detective Raymond Torres, Coconino County Sheriff's Department, retired. If anyone can hear this, please respond." Only static answered, but the radio was transmitting. After 15 years, it was still trying to reach someone. Part 4. Margaret Pritchard was 53 years old when she received the call from the Mojave County Sheriff's Department. She was at work, processing accounts payable for a small manufacturing company in Tulsa, the kind of quiet, predictable job that had helped her survive the years after Dale's disappearance. The receptionist told her there was a call, said it was urgent, from Arizona. Margaret's hands went cold. She picked up the phone, and a deputy named Rawlings introduced himself and told her they'd found a truck matching Dale's description. The words hit her like a physical blow. For 15 years, she'd existed in a strange limbo between hope and grief, never fully able to mourn because there'd been no body, no proof, no ending. Now, suddenly, there was something concrete, something real. She thanked Deputy Rawlings in a voice that didn't sound like her own. hung up, and sat staring at her computer screen for 10 minutes before her supervisor noticed and asked if she was all right. She wasn't all right. She hadn't been all right since November 3rd, 1982, but now, finally, there might be answers. She called Lisa in Denver. Her daughter, now 27 and working as a paralegal at a firm specializing in missing persons cases, caught the first flight to Tulsa. They drove to Arizona together, neither speaking much, the rental car eating up miles of Interstate 40, the modern highway that had replaced the old Route 66. The October heat was still brutal when they arrived in Kingman, the sky an endless blue dome over rust-colored earth that had swallowed Dale and held him for 15 years. Deputy Rawlings met them at the sheriff's office, a kind man in his 40s who handled their grief with practiced compassion. He explained that the truck had been towed to an impound yard, that investigators were still processing the scene, that they hadn't found human remains yet but were searching the surrounding area. He mentioned the CB radio, the impossible fact of its continued operation, and Margaret felt something shift in her chest, a flutter of something that might have been hope or might have been the final breaking of her heart. They drove to the impound yard in Deputy Rawlings' patrol car. The yard was surrounded by chain-link fence topped with barbed wire, filled with seized vehicles and accident wrecks awaiting insurance claims. Dale's Peterbilt sat in the far corner, looking small and pathetic despite its size, a once proud machine reduced to rust and ruin. Margaret got out of the car slowly, Lisa beside her, and approached her husband's truck like she was approaching his grave. She placed her hand on the corroded metal of the door, felt the desert heat radiating from it, and tears she'd been holding back for 15 years finally came. Lisa wrapped her arms around her mother, and they stood there crying in an impound yard in Arizona, mourning a man who'd been taken from them in ways they still couldn't understand. "Can I go inside?" Margaret finally asked. Deputy Rawlings hesitated, then nodded. "Yes, ma'am. Just be careful. The structure's not stable." Margaret climbed into the cab, Lisa following. The interior was gutted by time and weather, seat cushions rotted to springs, dashboard cracked like dried earth, sand everywhere, in every crevice and corner. But the CB radio looked almost pristine, like it had been installed yesterday. The green indicator light pulsed gently, and static whispered from the speaker, a sound Margaret remembered from thousands of nights listening to Dale check in during his runs. She picked up the handset with trembling fingers, felt its familiar weight, the textured plastic grip. She pressed the talk button. The static changed, became louder, more focused. Margaret spoke into the microphone, her voice breaking. "Dale, are you there? It's Margaret. Can you hear me? Baby, if you're out there, please answer me. Please." Only static responded. But in that moment, sitting in the remains of her husband's truck with her daughter beside her, Margaret felt something she couldn't explain. Not his presence exactly, but a connection. Like the radio was a bridge across time and death, and somewhere on the other side, Dale was listening. Lisa reached over and touched the radio dial, turned it slowly, scanning through the channels. The static changed frequency, rose and fell like waves. On Channel 9, the emergency channel, they heard something different, not voices, but a pattern in the noise. Rhythmic, deliberate, repeating. Lisa, who'd learned Morse code in Girl Scouts 15 years ago, recognized it immediately. "Mom," she whispered, "that's SOS, 3 short, 3 long, 3 short. It's repeating." Margaret listened, her heart pounding. The pattern cycled every few minutes. SOS, pause, then what sounded like a series of numbers. Lisa grabbed a notebook from her purse and began writing down the sequence, timing the intervals, marking the dots and dashes. After 10 minutes, she had it. SOS, then 35, 2, 113, 4, then 1982. "Coordinates," Lisa said, her paralegal training kicking in, latitude and longitude, and the year. They found Deputy Rawlings outside the impound yard office, showed him the notebook. He pulled out a GPS unit and entered the coordinates. The device calculated for a moment, then displayed a location, 8 miles northeast of their current position, deep in the Hualapai Valley, an area known for its maze of canyons and nearly inaccessible terrain. "Could be nothing," Rawlings said cautiously. "Could be interference, random patterns that sound like code. The radio's been sitting out there for 15 years. Anything could be causing that signal." But Margaret knew better. She knew Dale. If there was any way to send them a message, any way to leave them breadcrumbs to follow, he would. "We need to check it out," she said, her voice firm for the first time in years. "Please, if there's any chance." Rawlings nodded. "I'll organize a search team. We'll head out first thing tomorrow morning." That night, Margaret and Lisa sat in their motel room in Kingman, unable to sleep. They listened to the news reports. Word had gotten out about the discovered truck, about the mysteriously functioning CB radio. Local stations were calling it the ghost truck of Route 66, speculating about everything from electromagnetic anomalies to supernatural phenomena. Margaret ignored the sensationalism. She wasn't interested in mysteries or marvels. She just wanted to find her husband. Part 5. The search team assembled at dawn. Deputy Rawlings, 2 other Mojave County deputies, a search and rescue specialist named Tom Guerrero, who knew the Hualapai Valley terrain, Detective Raymond Torres, who'd driven through the night from Sedona when he heard about the coordinates, Margaret and Lisa. They loaded into 2 4-wheel drive vehicles, brought water, medical supplies, climbing equipment, and hope tempered by 15 years of disappointment. The drive took them on increasingly rough roads, paved asphalt giving way to graded dirt, then to barely visible tracks, winding through scrub brush and around towering rock formations. After an hour, they had to abandon the vehicles and continue on foot, following GPS coordinates that led them deeper into canyon country. The November sun climbed higher, and despite the season, the temperature pushed into the 80s. They hiked for 2 hours, scrambling over rockfalls, navigating around dead-end canyons, following the coordinates like a treasure map drawn by ghosts. Tom Guerrero, the search and rescue specialist, kept checking his GPS unit and shaking his head. "This doesn't make sense," he muttered to Torres. "There's no way an 18-wheeler could have reached this area. Even on foot, it's rough going. How did a 40-foot truck and trailer get out here?" Torres had no answer. Nothing about this case had ever made sense. At 10:47 a.m., they found it. Wedged in a narrow canyon, hidden beneath a sandstone overhang that made it invisible from above, was the trailer from Dale's truck. The container doors were sealed, the locking mechanism intact. Deputy Rawlings used bolt cutters to break the lock, and they swung the doors open. Inside, still strapped down and secured, were the machinery parts Dale had been hauling. Electrical transformers, industrial motors, metal components crated and wrapped. 15 years in the desert, and the cargo was exactly as it had been loaded in Oklahoma City. But carved into the canyon wall beside the trailer, someone had etched a message with what looked like a sharp rock or piece of metal. The letters were deep, deliberate, carved by someone who'd had time and determination. Dale Pritchard, Nov, 1982. If found, tell Margaret I tried to get home. Margaret's knees buckled. Lisa caught her mother, held her up, both of them staring at the message Dale had left, his final communication etched in stone. Margaret reached out and traced the letters with her fingers, feeling the grooves he'd carved, connecting with her husband across 15 years of absence. "Spread out," Tom Guerrero said quietly. "Look for anything else, carefully." The team fanned out, searching the canyon floor, checking crevices and overhangs. Torres moved methodically, his old detective instincts sharp despite retirement. 20 minutes later, 50 yards from the trailer, he found a small cave, more of an overhang, really, carved into the canyon wall about 6 feet up. He climbed up carefully and looked inside. Dale Pritchard's remains lay on the cave floor, partially covered by wind-blown sand. Torres had seen enough death in his career to maintain his professional composure, but finding Dale after 15 years of searching hit him harder than he'd expected. He backed out of the cave and called for Deputy Rawlings. They decided not to tell Margaret until they'd secured the scene. The Mojave County medical examiner was helicoptered in, along with a forensics team. They worked for hours, documenting everything, photographing the scene from every angle. Dale had clearly taken shelter in the cave, had tried to make himself comfortable. Near his remains, they found a first aid kit from the truck, mostly used, a water bottle, a truck stop coffee mug, and a small spiral notebook, its pages weathered but protected by the cave's shelter. The medical examiner, a woman named Dr. Patricia Chen, made her preliminary assessment. Dale had suffered severe trauma, broken left leg, fractured ribs, internal injuries. He'd survived the initial incident, whatever it had been, but his injuries had been too severe for him to walk out. Based on the deterioration of the remains and the supplies found in the cave, Dr. Chen estimated he'd lived for 1 to 2 weeks after the crash before succumbing to his injuries, infection, and exposure. He fought hard, Dr. Chen said quietly to Torres. Most people wouldn't have lasted this long with these injuries, this far from help. Deputy Rawlings brought the notebook to Margaret as the sun began its descent toward the western horizon. She sat on a flat rock near the canyon entrance, Lisa beside her, both emotionally exhausted. Rawlings crouched in front of them, holding the notebook like it was made of glass. "Ma'am, we found your husband. I'm very sorry. But we also found this. It's a journal he kept. The medical examiner says you can read it if you'd like, but I want to prepare you. It might be difficult." Margaret took the notebook with both hands, felt its weight. Imagined Dale writing in it during his final days. "Thank you," she whispered. "Can I read it now?" "Here." "Of course." Margaret opened the notebook, and Lisa leaned close, and together they read their husband and father's final words. Part 6. The journal entries were written in pencil, Dale's handwriting shaky but legible, documenting the final days of his life with heartbreaking clarity. November 3rd, 1982, 6:45 p.m., something wrong with the sky. Electrical storm maybe, but no lightning. All purple and green like the northern lights, but we're in Arizona. Radio going crazy, picking up frequencies I've never heard, pulling over to check it out. Don't like this. 6:50 p.m., lights everywhere, not headlights, not stars. Bright as the sun, but not hurting my eyes. Truck's electrical system going haywire, instruments spinning, engine dead, can't restart it. CB still working somehow, don't understand how. Tried calling for help, but no one responding. Or maybe I'm not transmitting. Lights getting closer, 7:00 p.m. This isn't possible. I'm writing this so whoever finds it knows I'm not crazy. The truck is moving. I'm not driving it. Engines still dead, no power, but the truck is moving, lifting off the ground. Margaret, if anyone finds this, I'm not crazy. I can see the highway below me. I'm maybe 100 feet in the air. The lights are all around the truck. I'm floating. This is happening. I don't know what this is, but it's real. 7:15 p.m. Set down hard. Felt like dropping from a 2-story building. Front end of cab smashed in. I think I broke my leg, definitely some ribs. Trailer detached, don't know where, maybe half-mile back. Can't see the highway anymore. I'm in a canyon somewhere. It's getting dark. Radio still on somehow, still broadcasting. Trying to send SOS on Channel 9. Don't know if anyone can hear me. November 4th. Morning. Pain is real bad. Left leg is definitely broken, turned wrong below the knee. Ribs hurt when I breathe. Think I've got internal bleeding but don't know how bad. Found my first aid kit, took some aspirin, wrapped the leg best I could. Can't walk. Dragged myself to a cave about 50 yards from the truck. Found water seeping from the rocks. That's good. Won't die of thirst at least. Radio still working, still broadcasting coordinates on Channel 9. Been doing it all night. How is it still on? Truck battery is dead. No power anywhere. But the radio keeps going. It's like it knows I need it. Thank God for small miracles. Heard helicopters this morning. Search parties maybe. Tried to signal with the truck's mirror but don't think they saw. Too far away or maybe in the wrong area. Need to conserve energy. Leg is swelling bad. November 5th. Fever started. Leg is infected, I think. Used the antibiotic ointment from the first aid kit, but don't think it's enough. Need real medical help. Keep passing out, losing time. Radio still transmitting. I can hear it from the cave, that steady static, those coordinates repeating. Someone will hear it eventually. Someone has to. Margaret, if you find this, I'm so sorry. I know you're worried sick. Tell Lisa I love her. Tell her I'm sorry I'm going to miss her recital. I wanted to be there so bad. I've been thinking about you both constantly. That's what's keeping me going. The thought of getting home to you. November 6th. Tried to reach the main road today. Made it maybe 100 yards before the pain got too bad and I had to turn back. Leg is purple now, hot to the touch. Fever is worse. Been drinking the cave water, trying to stay hydrated. Still have some jerky from the truck stop, couple candy bars. Not hungry anyway. Keeps replaying in my mind what happened. Those lights. The truck lifting off the ground. None of it makes sense. Military? Some kind of secret aircraft? But why would they grab a truck? Unless it was an accident, they didn't mean to. Or maybe I'm hallucinating, maybe I had a seizure or something, crashed the truck, and my brain invented the lights to make sense of it. But the truck is 8 miles from the highway in terrain it couldn't have driven. How did it get here if I'm hallucinating? Radio still going, still transmitting the coordinates. 35 degrees, 14 minutes north, 113 degrees, 26 minutes west. Over and over. Someone will hear it. Someone has to hear it. November 8th. Weaker now. Haven't eaten in 2 days. Can't keep anything down. Leg smells bad. Know what that means. Carved message on the canyon wall near the trailer. Used a sharp rock. Took hours, but I needed to leave something physical, something that won't fade. If the radio stops, if my journal gets destroyed, at least there'll be that message. Let Margaret know I didn't leave her. Let her know I tried. November 10th. Hard to write now. Hand shaking, keep drifting in and out. Dreams and memories all mixed up. Dreamed about our wedding day. You wore your mother's dress. We danced to that song you loved. What was it? Can't remember. Getting fuzzy. Radio still transmitting. Can hear it in the distance. Feels like a heartbeat. As long as it keeps going, I'm still here. Still fighting. November 12th. Cold tonight. November desert gets cold. Didn't expect that. Shivering but also burning up. Fever. Infection. I know what's happening. Not stupid. Just sorry. Sorry I can't get home. Sorry Lisa will grow up without me. Sorry Margaret has to be alone. But I tried. God knows I tried. Fought as long as I could. Radio's still going, still transmitting the coordinates. Maybe someone will find this someday. Maybe you'll know I didn't abandon you, that I loved you both every second, that I died trying to come home. Tell Lisa to keep playing piano. Tell her I'm sorry I missed the recital, but I'm proud of her. Tell her to be strong for her mother. Tell Margaret I love her, loved her from the day we met until this last breath. If there's anything after this, I'll wait for her, however long it takes. Coordinates are 35, 2, 113, 4, year is 1982, radio will keep transmitting even after I'm gone. Don't know how, but it will. Find me, please find me. Don't let me disappear forever. I love you, both of you, always. Dale. Margaret finished reading, tears streaming down her face, her hands clutching the notebook so hard her knuckles were white. Lisa was sobbing openly, her head on her mother's shoulder. The search team stood at a respectful distance, giving them privacy in their grief. The canyon walls glowed orange-red in the setting sun, and somewhere in the distance, very faint, they could still hear static from the CB radio in Dale's truck, still transmitting after 15 years, still calling them home. Detective Torres approached quietly, sat down on the rock next to Margaret. He didn't say anything, just sat with her, this retired cop who'd never met Dale Pritchard, but had spent 15 years searching for him. "Thank you," Margaret finally said, "for never giving up. For finding him." Torres nodded, his throat tight. "He never gave up either. He fought for you, for Lisa. Right until the end." They helicoptered Dale's remains out that evening, along with the journal, the carved message photographed and preserved. The trailer was left in the canyon, too remote to recover without massive expense, but the county placed a memorial plaque on the canyon wall next to Dale's carved message. Margaret and Lisa stayed in Arizona for 2 more weeks, handling arrangements, working with the medical examiner's office, finally bringing Dale home to Tulsa. The funeral was held in December 1997, 15 years after his disappearance. Hundreds of truckers attended, their rigs forming a convoy that stretched for miles, following Dale's hearse to the cemetery. The service was simple, dignified. Margaret spoke briefly, reading from the journal, sharing Dale's words with everyone who'd come to honor him. "My husband was taken by something we don't understand," she said, her voice strong despite the tears. "But he survived. He fought, and he tried to come home to us. That's what matters. Not the mystery, but his love and courage." The CB radio was donated to the Smithsonian Institution, where it underwent extensive testing. Engineers from MIT, Caltech, and NASA examined it, trying to understand how it had functioned for 15 years without external power. They found nothing unusual. It was a standard Cobra 29 LTD, manufactured in 1978. No modifications, no exotic components. But it worked. They placed it in a Faraday cage, isolating it from all electromagnetic radiation. It continued functioning. They disassembled it, tested every component, rebuilt it. It still worked. Finally, they gave up trying to explain it and placed it in climate-controlled storage, where it remains today, still transmitting faint static, still powered by nothing anyone can identify. A technological impossibility that refuses to obey the rules. The final report from the Mojave County Sheriff's Department, filed in March 1998, documented the facts, but couldn't provide satisfying answers to the central mysteries. Multiple witnesses had reported unusual aerial lights on the night of the disappearance. The truck had been found nearly 8 miles from Route 66, in terrain impossible for an 18-wheeler to navigate. The damage pattern suggested a fall from significant height, at least 50 feet based on structural analysis, yet there was no location in the area from which it could have fallen. And the CB radio's continued operation defied every known principle of electrical engineering. Detective Sarah Chen, a young investigator who'd been assigned to review the cold case files, conducted follow-up interviews with all the original witnesses. She discovered something Raymond Torres had documented but never been able to pursue. The Air Force had logged radar anomalies over northern Arizona on the night of November 3, 1982. The official records, obtained through a Freedom of Information Act request, showed multiple unknowns, moving at speeds exceeding any known aircraft capabilities. The targets had appeared suddenly around 6:45 p.m., moved erratically for approximately 20 minutes, then vanished from radar at 7:05 p.m. Chen tracked down a retired Air Force radar operator who'd been on duty at Luke Air Force Base that night. Speaking off the record, the operator confirmed he'd seen the anomalies. "We called them in, followed procedure," he said, "but we were told to log it and forget it. Happened sometimes in those days. things we saw that didn't fit into any category we had. We logged them as weather phenomena or equipment malfunction and moved on. But I remember that night because the targets were so clear, so obviously controlled. They weren't weather balloons or atmospheric reflections. They moved with purpose, and then they just disappeared. Margaret Pritchard lived another 20 years after Dale's funeral, passing away in 2017 at age 73. She never spoke publicly about what she thought had happened to her husband, whether she believed the lights were military, extraterrestrial, or something else entirely. In her final interview, given to a documentary filmmaker 6 months before her death, she said simply, "Dale was taken from us by forces beyond our understanding, but his love transcended whatever happened that night. The radio kept calling us, kept transmitting, because his will to reach us was stronger than death, stronger than the impossible. That's all I need to know." Lisa Pritchard Morrison, now a victims' rights attorney in Denver, still visits the memorial site in the Hualapai Valley once a year. The Truckers' Union maintains the plaque, replacing it when desert weather damages it. The inscription reads, "Dale Pritchard, November 1982. Keep the hammer down and the lights on." She brings her own children now, tells them about the grandfather they never met, the man who fought for 15 days to come home, who left them messages in a journal and coordinates in radio waves, who loved them across time and space and death. Route 66 is mostly abandoned now, bypassed by Interstate 40, a ghost road winding through the desert with faded memories of its heyday as America's main street. But truckers still use CB Channel 19, still swap stories of strange sightings and unexplained phenomena along the old highway. And sometimes, on quiet November nights, when the desert wind is still and the sky is clear, drivers report hearing something on Channel 9, a rhythmic pattern in the static, 3 short bursts, 3 long, 3 short, followed by coordinates, and a year, 35, 2, 113, 4, 1982. Dale Pritchard's story remains one of the great unsolved mysteries of the American Southwest. What took him that November evening? How did his truck travel 8 miles across impossible terrain? Why did his CB radio continue functioning for 15 years without power? The questions remain unanswered, perhaps unanswerable. But the truth at the heart of the mystery is simple and undeniable. A man loved his family, fought to survive, and left them messages that transcended the boundaries of what we understand as possible. The CB radio still transmits from its storage facility at the Smithsonian, its green indicator light glowing faintly in the darkness, a beacon across time, a mystery that refuses to fade. A connection between a man who wanted to come home and the family who never stopped listening.